Garber Now podcast, and we are here with none other than an American comedian, a well-known American comedian down in the South here in the United States, none other than Corey, the Buttercream Dream. Forrester. Corey,
What's
good to
going
have you
on?
on, man.
What's going on, Jordan? How are you, buddy? I'm
I'm
solid, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I think this is the first Canadian podcast I've done. I think.
first ever Canadian podcast. What did you hear about Canada before we even did a podcast? What do you know about us?
Oh no, I see. I've toured in Canada before. I've done some shows in Canada, and I think it was Larry Miller. He's a comedian that he described Canada. And this is pretty accurate. He said, when you're an American that goes to Canada, it's like you woke up and you think you're in New York, and then you slowly start getting clues that something is just a little off. And that's how Canada feels to me, but in a good way. I love Canada. I think it's great people. Um, it's clean, or at least the places I went to in Canada were clean. And everyone in Canada, I guess it's because of my Southern accent. Like we're in the States here. If you've got a Southern accent, you go to California, people just immediately assume you're a racist. But when I was in Canada, everybody assumed I was like a cowboy or something. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's crazy, and when you performed in Canada, what was the whole different? What made it weird though? Like, what were the many factors that kind of created that way?
Some of the many factors that I just and now that I'm looking back on it, it's like, dude, duh. Like, of course this would make a difference. My first time in Canada, nothing really prepared me for it. And I'd been working, like, I'm from the South, so I have a lot of jokes about being from the South, obviously. In the States, it's, the duality of the South and like the difference between the North and the South, and a liberal person from the South and how weird that is. And in Canada, all that played, except for I didn't realize until the very first night, and I think we were in Toronto, I didn't realize how much U.S. history I had in my jokes, like how many like U.S. history references I had to like generals in the Civil War that like down here, it's like commonplace. Everybody knows. But up there, they're like, yeah, why would we fucking know about this guy? Like we would have like, I don't know who any of y'all's most famous generals are. Why the fuck would I? So it was just those little things that I didn't realize how many like specific American references that I had, and that was pretty much it. That was the one thing that was different. Other than I will tell you this, and this is a compliment. Canadian audiences are so polite. Like we only got heckled once. My buddy Drew got heckled, and he during the middle of his set he goes, he's like, "Man, I can't believe." He's like, "I've been in Canada. All I've heard is how nice y'all are, and then I get heckled." And the person that heckled him goes, "I'm sorry," and then the whole place fell apart because like even y'all's hecklers are like, "I shouldn't have done that."
And that's crazy. Like, talk about one thing we can share in common with the wrestling business is that you got to perform in front of a live crowd. And when you do stand-up comedy, performing in front of a live crowd is amazing. Now, let's talk about some of your best skits you did. I think it was The Sanctity of Marriage. And then you also did one about
Oh yeah.
the trans bathrooms. When you're performing in front of a live crowd like that and you got a joke and it hits a home run, like, how does that make you feel? Is it like a similar feeling to wrestling?
I mean, I've never wrestled, but I would have to assume I've talked to enough wrestlers to know that like getting a pop in front of a live crowd, no matter what it is that you're doing, is probably the same across the board. And there really is nothing like it. I mean, the only thing I can like when you're in the middle of a bit like that bit that you're talking about, that was my closer on my last album. And it was like a 15-minute long bit. And I knew it frontwards and backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm never botching this like that. And when it's going well, when you're in front of a hot crowd and you're in the pocket and you got that bit, it literally feels like you're floating above yourself, watching yourself destroy and enjoying it. You know what I'm saying? Like I've done that joke so many times. And once you get so good at it, you no longer even, you're kind of on autopilot. Like when you're in the middle of telling a joke, if it's a joke you've done a while and you're perfecting it, you're actually like in your head, you're 3 moves ahead. Like your body's here telling the joke. And I don't know if this is how it is in wrestling. Like once, if you and a guy have such good chemistry, you're like, well, I don't really have to worry about this. I know that he's going to land the Hurricane Rana perfectly and I can just flip over and you're thinking about your finish and you're crushing. But that's how it is in stand-up. Like I'm 3 or 4 moves ahead and I'm sitting there just going like, oh man, they don't even know what they're in for once I hit my finisher. You know what I mean?
It's crazy. Like, how did that begin? Sorry for the volume increase there. I have to realize my microphone was now we're at a perfect level. But when you did that first skit, did you start with open mic night or did you start through connections or like how did it all begin for you this journey?
it was kind of it ended up being, you know, the standard open mic night situation, but for me the very first time was different just because I'd been wanting to do stand up since I was about 5 years old. That's when I saw it. Like I remember seeing it on TV, like on the, you know, Johnny Carson and then Jay Leno show, and I see, you know, I'd see my dad laugh at this, and I was like, well, I gotta. It seems like if I could do that, I could make dad laugh. I probably wouldn't get in trouble as much, you know. And so I went at 16 years old. Well, first off, at 15 years old, me and my buddy snuck into our comedy club to see our first live stand-up show. And I remember my buddy, like I'd been telling him for years, like I'm gonna do that one day. I'm gonna do that one day. And we go in and we see this pro, like a first live stand-up show, and we leave. And my buddy's like, "Dude, no offense, but there's no way you can do it as good as that guy." And I was like, "No, you're right, but I got to start somewhere." So I started writing this blog on MySpace, which dates me a little bit. This was when I was 16 years old, and I'm about to be 33. So I've been doing stand up quite a while, you know, all my life, like half my life at least, all my adult life. So I started writing this blog on MySpace, and I guess I got some followers from the area. And one day this dude sent me a message, and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, I'm a promoter here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I want you to come host this comedy show." And I was like, I've never done stand up. And he's like, "Well, dude, there's blogs that you're writing, like you're writing jokes, like just go tell those jokes." And I was like, "Man, I'm not ready for that." And he goes, "I'll give you $100 if you open the show." And I was like, "I'll be there." You know what I mean? Like at 16 years old, $100, like that's like telling me now I'm gonna give you $5,000. Like I'm doing whatever gig you want me to do.
That's how much I make as a
so I went.
now.
Right. There you go. So so I go, and my leg was trembling, and one of my buddies drove me up there, and it was probably terrible, but like I got a good laugh, and I was bit by the bug, and that was it. And I tell a lot of people, like, getting paid, usually it takes so long to get paid in stand up, and I got paid $100 my first time, but then it took me like probably 5 years to get paid again. You know what I mean? Like after that, I would go just to our local comedy club, open mic night, B night, radio promotion night. I'm doing everything I can. 5 years later, I think maybe I made another $25. And then now at about 16 years in, we're starting to break even, you know?
Well, you are actually part of a very famous comedy tour called the Well Read Comedy Tour. You actually team up with two other great comedians as well. You put on some solid shows. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, those are two dudes, Trey Crowder and Drew Morgan. We met, I think we've been touring together for almost 5 years, but we met about 9 years ago. And the way that works out is like, I don't know how it is in Canada really, but like, in a lot of places like New York and California, there's a comedy club every other block. You know what I'm saying? If not more, two comedy clubs a block. But where I'm from in the southern part of the States, there's one comedy club every hour and a half or 2 hours. And they worked at the one in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I worked at the one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so what would happen was you'd work at this one club a lot, and then it's like, all right, I need to go drive the hour and a half and go in front of a different audience and try this out. So they would do that and come to Chattanooga. I would do that and go to Knoxville. And eventually we saw each other, and they were the only two dudes. And to them, I was one of the only dudes that they were doing stand up like I was doing stand up. And by that, I mean, we were Southern, but we weren't doing like Larry the Cable Guy, Jeff Foxworthy stuff, which by the way, I need to put I need to say this, no offense to those guys, because those two dudes are beasts. Jeff Foxworthy is one of my heroes. But basically what I mean by that is, most people we know who wanted to talk about maybe more progressive stuff or have maybe more liberal ideals, what they would do was they would drop their accent so that I guess they were ashamed of being from the South. And we were just like, no, man, we can be both. Like we can be overtly Southern, and we can speak our mind and say that we're a more progressive, open-minded group of people. Why not? You know? And so I saw them doing that, and they saw me doing that, and we were like, oh my God. And we just kind of gravitated towards each other, and we're like, we got to stay together forever. You're the only people like me. And then years and years and years later, after writing and doing online sketches and just trying our hand at everything, just drunk on our porches, praying to God something would work, finally Trey started this character called the Liberal Redneck. And one of his first videos got like 25 million views and got him all these followers. And then we were able to start a stand-up tour that we're still on 5 years later.
And they've been selling out like consistently, haven't they?
Yeah, man, like nuts. It's been crazy. Like we moved pretty quickly from stand-up comedy clubs to theaters. And it's just been great, man. Now, I don't know what the future holds after the pandemic, but yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and it's, changed my life forever. And has just given us so many opportunities. And again, like I miss it so bad. I miss being in front of that live crowd so bad.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, this pandemic just dies down eventually. Hopefully things get back to normal soon. But like looking at your resume too, you do have a history of Canada as well on stage, not with just that, but being on the CBC, and you were also on The View as well. What was that? How
Yeah,
did that all
yeah.
come about? That must have been quite the opportunity.
It was quite the opportunity. How that came about was me and the guys 4 years ago. We got a book deal, which really changed my life. Simon and Schuster gave us a book deal. We all three wrote a book together, and then a lady by the name of Whoopi Goldberg read said book, and she was. I remember it was crazy. My wife's grandma called me one day, and she's like, "Hey, I heard that you were going on The View," and I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're going to be on The View. And I was like, Grandma Sandy, no offense, but I'm pretty sure that I would have found out that I was going on The View before you would have found out you were going on The View. So what I had asked her, what I figured out in my head is that some other comedian from the South was going on The View, and they just said Southern comedian, blah, blah, blah. And in her mind, she's like, well, if it's a Southern comedian, it must be, Corey. And so I was like, no, Grandma Sandy, I'm not going on The View. And she's like, they were talking about, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about you on The View and said that she had to have you on. I was like, all right, hang up the phone with her. My next call is from my manager. And she's like, hey, did you hear that Whoopi Goldberg was talking about you on The View? And I was like, God damn, I got to call Grandma Sandy back. So yeah, Whoopi read our book, and then she had us on, and we got to talk about it. It was my first time on live national television. It was absolutely wild. We sold a bunch of books that day, and you won't believe it, it helped ticket sales as well.
Well, that's awesome. That's what I had in wrestling too. Is I remember, I did an interview, and what I do is how I get my press is I'll just copy, paste, send to all the major sites, and
Yeah.
keep working hard all night, and eventually it gets out there, and you get that big result. And for that to be on The View, everything pretty must have changed from there. Pretty much. So did things like increase dramatically after that, or was it kind of just like a 2 week, 15-minute of fame thing, and did it die down, or are you still being?
No, I mean, obviously there was a peak, like, our book peaked right about 2 weeks after that. Yes. But like luckily for me, like me and Whoopi were talking about it. First name basis with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm just bullshitting. But basically what it is that I've been doing stand up for a long time before then. I think that if I had just started out in comedy, like if all of us were very new and we had just gotten this lucky break, I think that we would be done now. You know what I mean? I think it
Yeah.
would have been a 15-minute thing, but basically, our hard work met an opportunity, and that's what luck was. And luckily for, like, it just opened up a bunch of doors. And then once we were able to do this, and this, it's like, then we got a sitcom deal after that. And then I'm currently still in a sitcom deal with ABC, and working on a cartoon, and just hosted a barbecue show for the Cooking Channel, and wrote a game show for Game Show Network. So the ball's rolled pretty good. Hadn't been back on The View. That'd be sweet. They could have me back on, but at the same time, I ain't wrote another book since then, so I don't blame them. But no, man, everything's been good. It all changed my life, and I think the important part is, you just have to, like, once something like that happens, you can't just be like, cool, this happened, I'm good. You got to work even harder after that than you did to get there, if that makes sense.
No, most certainly. And you, after that, you're on CBC. You said you're doing work for ABC. You're on ABC as well, and you've been in multiple movies as well, or short films, or whatnot. What was the CBC like, and the BBC? Let's cover England and Canada here. What were those projects for?
So those projects, it was for a documentary that I still have not seen, because it was not. I'm glad that you just brought that back up, because it reminded me that I need to, like, get a hold of the people that did that so I could actually see the project. It was for a project called My Trans American Life, I think is what it was. And all I know is I was just straight up interviewed in it, because it was about the transgender bathroom law in North Carolina. And that was Trey's video that was so popular, was about that bathroom law. And they just interviewed us, I think, in San Francisco after a show. So that's really, like, that one's a little boring. That's pretty much the entire story on that. Like, I didn't actually get to go to, the BBC or whatever. It was just a project for them.
Oh, okay. But you said a joke about that
Yeah.
knocked out of the park. Like, what was that all about? Like, how did that whole thing kind of come together, and how did you hit that home run when you delivered that to the crowd?
Oh, that joke, man. So here's the weird thing about that and the weird thing about jokes in general. So the joke in question is a joke about transgender people in the military, right? So,
Yeah.
there was this big hoopla about transgender people in the military. And like, obviously, my stance on it was just like, dude, first off, anybody that wants to join the military, you should support them. Like, y'all are the group of people who's constantly support the troops, support the troops, support the troops. So I just feel like if anybody's that brave, what do you care
Yeah,
what their
exactly.
personal situation is? That's just me. It's just me. So the whole joke was about that and how ridiculous that sounds. And I did an act out of like what it would look like for one soldier in the foxhole to be worried about the genitalia of another soldier in the foxhole, and it was very timely and very prescient at the time. But the thing is that I'd been doing that joke for like 9 years, and you could say, well, the transgender bathroom thing and the transgender military thing isn't 9 years old. No, it's not. It's that joke originally was about gays in the military, because that was the big hot button before that. And there was this thing called don't ask, don't tell, which is basically like, look, if you're gay, just don't say shit, and then you can be in the military. But if we find out you're gay, you're gone. Well, the joke was just about that and how crazy, it would be that you would care that someone was a homosexual when they like, as long as they can shoot and don't want, will help you not get shot. I think that should be okay. And so what happened was, don't ask, don't tell got repealed. And obviously I was happy about that because I thought it was a bullshit policy. And I had a lot of people that, like my buddies in comedy who were degenerate, horrible people who were like, oh man, it sucks that it sucks that don't ask, don't tell got repealed because now you can't do that joke anymore. And I was like, well, first off, it's a good thing because I hated that policy, but don't you worry. Something one day will come along even worse. And basically what happened was when the transgender and the military thing came along, I was able to just take that old joke and everywhere it said gay in the military, I just replaced it with transgender in the military. And sadly, bigotry and being a piece of shit is pretty evergreen. So it kept working.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now let's kind of go back to your wrestling character. Now, more of a character. President Trump posted something ridiculous, and the way you react to it made the whole world laugh. What was the whole Buttercream Dream about? And you're the European champion, so apparently you say that belt is still around. Tell us more about that.
So the first iteration of the Buttercream Dream, actually, like how those videos got started, I never really intended on them to be wrestling promos. What happened was something got said about protesters or something, blah, blah, blah. But basically, I saw the president and a bunch of people in power essentially throwing freedom of speech aside, even though freedom, like they love freedom of speech when it's them being able to say whatever they want without consequence. But all of a sudden, they don't want to believe that peaceful protests and stuff like that fall under freedom of speech, which they very much do. So I was just furious about the hypocrisy. And I was, as every white man does when they're furious, they go and they want to take a cell phone video and put it on the internet because
Yeah.
everyone needs to hear my opinion. So as I'm fired up, I'm walking out the house. I just look over and my buddy had just sent me that European Championship, but like I just got it in the mail and I saw it. And for some reason, I just grabbed it and put it over my shoulder as I was walking outside. And I just started filming myself. Because if you look in the first video, I'm not doing a different accent. I'm not doing a character voice. It's just me. And I didn't write, like nothing was written. It was very much just from my heart. But the video got shared a lot. And the reason it got shared a lot is because in the thumbnail of the video, you can see that I've got the European Championship over my belt. And I think everybody was like, wait a minute, hold up. What's going on here? That's shiny. And then afterwards, all my buddies were like, dude, you got to keep doing them. And I was like, oh my God, you know what I should do? I should just do every video as if I'm cutting a promo on whatever political bullshit I see that day. And I'll keep the belt over me. And everybody was like, why'd you use the European Championship? And I said, well, the easiest answer to that is it's the only belt I have. But so in kayfabe, it's because I'm the European champion because in 1776, I don't know if y'all know what happened, but we took that belt from them too. That's the whole, the workaround joke. But really, it's the only belt I have. And to me, it just adds an extra layer of confusing. People are already confused when they see a human being ranting and raving with a belt over their shoulder and they don't know them from any promotion. So they're like, what the hell? Then they see that it's the European Championship, but this dude's talking about American stuff. And it just works on so many levels. I just want to confuse people, really, is what it is. And I think it works.
And you know, when you do comedy about such a big topic like politics, like you definitely have to be on your game. You definitely have to know what you're talking about. There's many times where I would say political things and look like an idiot. So like, how?
Me too. By the way, in 45-second chunks, I can do it, but anything longer than that, I'm an idiot.
But the thing is, when it comes to like even your writing, you know, how did you get all this inspiration from politics? Why not podcast about sports or anything about the state of Georgia? But why politics? What made it want to be about that?
Well, first of all, I've never really wanted it to be. That's a good question though, because I never really I never considered myself a political comedian until people like told me that I was. I think what it is like, especially when Trump started running for president in 2016, I kind of made like a pretty big shift. And I think the reason is that a lot of people in this country started associating people with my accent with being huge Trump supporters. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of those. But Trump also won pretty much every category of white people, like even the rich ones in New York, the rich ones in California. So it made me upset. And it also made me very defensive in the sense of like, I was like, regardless of whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. That's how life works. Whether you like it or not, people are going to associate your accent with this guy. How can you make sure that that's not always the case? Well, what I do is I wear it on my sleeve and I go out there every day and I go, hey, by the way, not me. Not me. And I'm a comedian. So I do that through humor. So I think the big shift for me politically was just being looked at as part of the problem and wanting to ensure people that I'm not. And again, the only way I know how to do that is through humor. And I hope one day, I really, 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 really hope one day that things are calmed down so much that I think to myself, you know what? You can just joke about football. And for the record, just for anybody listening, if you come to I haven't said Donald Trump's name on stage in probably 3 years. I'm not saying I haven't alluded to him. I'm not saying I haven't done political or societal comedy, but like, it's not like when you come see me, it's just Bill Maher ripped straight from the headlines. No offense to Bill Maher, very funny guy. I go to his rap party every year. It's fun. Bill, if you're listening, love you. I'm going to miss it this year because of the pandemic. What you going to do? But point is, I'm still going to go up there and talk about bonfires, getting drunk, hanging out with my buddies, you know, baling hay, all that shit. It's just that like every now and then one of my jokes will have some sort of message or some sort of angle because to me, that's just what makes me different. And in the entertainment world, in any facet, whether it be comedy, wrestling, music, or whatever, everybody wants that thing that sticks out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We can't all like it just like if you're a blonde girl that's just going to be showing your midriff and you've got a decent singing voice, there's a million of those. What are you going to do? Lady Gaga, she wore a meat dress. Now we all know who the fuck she is. Also, she's a very generationally talented human being, but you get what I'm saying. It's my goddamn gimmick, and that's what I do.
That's awesome stuff, man. You know,
Yeah, man.
if you have to ultimately pick between the two, like, you know, writing and doing stand-up is really two different aspects of things. How was the writing time? How long did it create that book? Like, if you had to do, like, a timeline of how long?
Oh, I can tell you exactly how long. 6 weeks, because that's all they gave us.
Oh, my. How many
it
pages
was
was
the
it?
it was the well, they wanted 280 and we gave them 365
In that amount of
because
time, wow.
yeah. And to me, honestly, as my dad told me, and this is true because I was so stressed out. Like when we wrote the book, we wrote it on the road. We were touring and we were doing all sorts of shit and doing talk shows and on a press junket and everything. And I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm so. I was like, they gave us 6 weeks to write this book. I'm so worried about it. And Dad told me something that still I maintain is true, and I think about it all the time. He said, if they gave you a year, you would have done it in 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's like, you wouldn't have worked on it all year. You would have waited till the last minute and then you'd have done it. And because they only gave us 6 weeks to write this book, I think it took away all the second guessing. It took away and it forced you like, I got to sit down and do this. And we were in really good creative headspaces. So yeah, 6 weeks, and it was a doozy.
Definitely. You've been a big major influence in terms of like comedy and political statements and things like that. But when it comes to someone that wants to do stand up, say for the first time, a guy like myself, you know, at my job at the bottom floor, there's a bar and they have an open mic there every Wednesday night. Say to someone doing their first ever open mic night, what advice do you got for someone like them?
I would say you need to go up with 5 minutes, which means you need to have 15 prepared because you'll think you what you think is 15 minutes will probably be 5. You know what I mean? Because you're going to sprint through it. You have to understand this is a bad thing about comedy. The bad thing about anything in the performing arts, really, except for like music, you can sort of practice in front of the mirror and just practice. But the only way you know a joke is good is if people laugh in it, which means the only way to tell that is if you tell it. So the only way to get good at comedy is to be really, really bad at comedy in public in front of a lot of people. So you just got to do it, have thick skin, keep writing, watch a lot, watch the greats. Obviously don't steal their shit, but like, there's nothing wrong with, oh, I like his, borrowing the cadence or like understanding the joke rhythm and stuff like that. Like, as Ernest Hemingway said, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. And I would say with comedy, if that's what you're trying to do, you need to watch, study the greats, understand what makes this guy different than this guy who's not as good. And you got to be fearless. It's brutal. I hope so bad that my kids don't want to do it. So bad. I hope my kids are the two biggest, or two. I say two, like I have in my fantasy, I have 2 kids. I hope my kids are the most boring people on earth. I hope they don't want to do anything entertainment. But yeah, man, you just gotta, prepare, write every day, and edit, and just know that it's probably gonna suck, but keep trying.
What was your experience with HBO? I actually forgot about touching that up. You did something with HBO as well, is that correct?
No, I was featured in a little tiny spot on Bill Maher talking about or whatever. Trey, my partner, he's been a panelist on Bill Maher several times. Actually, is today Friday?
Tomorrow.
No, he's gonna be on. Yeah, he's gonna be on Bill Maher tomorrow. Actually, on the panel. So no, I was just featured in a little tiny thing. I was featured on there just enough to where I can put it in my resume.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you know what? That's something to have on your resume when you get a major corporation there under your belt. That definitely adds to your schedule. So what do you got coming up, man? The coronavirus things are definitely a lot tougher. But do you have any podcasts that you do?